Good morning, I'm Isaac Gillen from the ISU. It's 9:45. Today's topic is about the Lunar Orbit Space Station. Today we have two special guests, Professor Parker Swart and Professor Gannon Malumbi. These two professors from North Carolina are going to tell us about this new project. Here's Gannon to talk about some of the science happening before the Lunar Orbit Space Station goes into space.
Yep, there's loads of science going on here. Some of it is physical and chemical, with the food is some mixtures and compounds. Most of our food that has to be cooked and therefore chemically changed is cooked down here on Earth because of the low energy lifestyle we'll have up in space, making cooking and microwaving very hard in space. One of the astronauts' favorite things to eat that's made down here is the citrus cylinders. We can't make them up in space because they must be baked, which we obviously can't do, where the ingredients fruit and sugar chemically combined by baking the two products to make one new product, the citrus cylinder. When cooking them, we know they're combined when the color changes from what it used to be, the red, into a bright orange. Once the food is baked, we know we made the new compound we call the citrus cylinder. However, we don't make all the food for the astronauts, as they make some for themselves as well. While they can only make mixtures with their food, thanks to the low energy, they can still make delicious physical combinations. One of their favorites is the fruity grain bar. The fruity grain bar is made by just mixing all of the ingredients together in one big bowl. They are then cut and refrigerated to make those bars. But the products are still separable, so it wasn't chemically changed. Oh, almost forgot. One of the major
Thanks, Gannon. Here's Professor Swart to talk about the dehydration of fruits.
The Lunar Orbit Space Station before it goes into orbit, and I've dehydrated some bananas here, some mangoes, a few grapes and some cranberries, some apple, and some pineapple. I use this scale right here to measure the weight in grams beforehand to see what the mass was. Then afterwards, I measured it again by simply putting the bag with the dehydrated fruit onto the scale. I've got that data on this computer here. This computer will allow NASA to look at this information and then transfer it into the other meal plans. The percent change was incredible. The apples, per se, man, they originally weighed 191 grams, and then afterwards, it says here that they were 114 grams. That's a big difference considering all the water that was taken out of that. But then again, that's quite a bit of apple. By this, we can tell what fruits would be best in space due to how much mass they take up afterwards. The ones that take up the least amount of mass and have the most calories would most likely be...
Thanks, Parker. Hear for more about the body systems.
Hi, I just finished the Lunar Orbit Space Station exercise of the day, and it was on a T2, a system that pulls back against my limbs and requires me to push forward against it, exerting my bones, muscles, and heart in the process. It's important to exercise 2 to 2.5 hours every day to avoid muscle and bone loss here in space. You see, the weightlessness of space causes our skeletal and muscular systems to relax and therefore deteriorate. This exercise also helps our cardiovascular system by raising our heart rate, which can be seen in the following graph.
Welcome back. I'm here with Professor Swart, and he's here to discuss the history of space and how the Lunar Orbit Space Station came into being.
Hi, I'm Professor Swart, the chief scientist here on the space station. For thousands of years, humans have learned more and more about the mysterious place. But only recently have we ventured out into the vast vacuum that is called space. Some of the most notable missions to space include the Apollo Space Shuttle and the Lunar Orbit Space Station mission. Some of the most notable missions to space include the Apollo, the Space Shuttle, and the International Space Station. But in the future, here comes the Lunar Orbit Space Station, which will be discussed throughout this video. That's the clip.
Out of those missions, which one came first?
The Apollo missions. The missions began in 1961, and their main goal was to bring humans to the moon and to make the U.S. a leading country in advancements towards space exploration. The missions used an Apollo command module as the spacecraft capsule and 2 different rockets for the propulsion of the spacecraft. The less powerful Saturn I for the first few missions, and the superior Saturn V was used for the remaining missions. Many missions used a space rover for the transportation around the moon as well. Very little space was given to the astronauts aboard these missions. They were only 160 cubic feet for two astronauts, relative space to a car. The space was consumed by the couches and instruments, such as the life support system for the astronauts. While those that were familiar with space travel will look at this early mission as amateur, its accomplishments for its time were outstanding. They managed to bring 11 space flights that varied in their success, which led to humans reaching a celestial body, the moon, other than the Earth, and led to us gaining space rock from that celestial body.
If I'm correct, wait. If I'm correct, the next missions that took place were the space shuttle missions, correct?
Yes, the mission started in 1972. The first space shuttle to leave the ground was the Enterprise on February 18th of 1977, and finally on April 12th of 1981, Columbia became the first space shuttle to have a flight to space. The space shuttle missions varied incredibly depending on what was needed, but the most common mission for the shuttles was to repair and build various satellites and space devices. Various vehicles were used on these amazing spaceships. The obvious device is the space shuttle with the rocket boosters and external tanks serving as a tool to propel the space shuttles into space. The living on the shuttles had some extreme improvements that, compared to the previous Apollo missions. There was enough space for 7 astronauts with 4 whole beds and several sleeping bags nailed to the wall of the shuttle. There were also plenty of space equipment on the ship due to plenty of experiments that took place for the crew's various missions. Overall, the space shuttle missions were successful in completing their common goal in repairing and building space-related structures. This can be seen in how they were helpful repairing the Hubble telescope, um, bringing satellites into space, and building the International Space Station, which leads to our next pair.
Oh, I know the next one. The International Space Station was that old space station that was orbited a few years ago before they built the Lunar Orbit Space Station.
Definitely. And if it wasn't for the ISS, we would probably not have been able to build the Lunar Orbit Space Station. The International Space Station was built in 2001 and promised to be a safe and reliable space station, and to invent and research various experiments needed in the space environment, usually in zero gravity, to fully complete the experiments. Most of the vehicles involved with the ISS were devices used to reach and create the International Space Station. Some of the notable ones were Expedition 1, the spacecraft used to bring the first people to the International Space Station, the Space Shuttle, a device that was used to create and visit the ISS, and finally, the European Automated Transfer Vehicle, a cargo spacecraft commonly used to reach the space station. Thanks to the extended uh, stay of astronauts had on the ISS, there was plenty of supplies to make sure that they stayed safe while visiting. The ISS had enough room for 10 people and had exercise equipment to keep the astronauts from having bone and muscle loss, and food that isn't tiny solid form in order to stop particles from spreading everywhere and harming the astronauts and contaminating the ISS air vents in the process. Overall, the International Space Station was very successful thanks to its helpful location in discovering and inventing new things, including the discovery of methods for delivering medicine to cancer cells and discovering better materials for space travel. To this day, the International Space Station serves as a symbol of the cooperation of several nations to create one magnificent creation, the ISS.
As many of you know, the final station we will be discussing is
The Lunar Orbit Space Station. That one's awesome. The Lunar Orbit Space Station was first put into construction in the summer of 2018. Its main goals are to obtain more information on asteroids, the Moon, and Mars to send humans up to the Big Red Planet. The vehicles involved in the project are very unique compared to the past space missions. The missions have led to the construction of a robotic spacecraft called the Power and Propulsion Bus, as well as a deep space transport vehicle to send humans to Mars and Orion crew vehicle, which will serve as a proportion habitation for astronauts. Though we haven't been able to send people to Mars just yet, the living spaces for astronauts in the Lunar Orbit Space Station are very tight. So, supplies will be made to conserve the limited living space the astronauts have. Some of these conservations can be seen in the fridge, used as a storage space for food and scientific samples. The dining table being foldable and beds are deflatable. One problem that our missions have and might eventually run into is how to dispose of all the waste that the station and the space capsules are bound to create.
As you can see, space travel had widely improved from the amateur days of the Apollo mission to the engineering work of art that is the Lunar Orbit Space Station. These explorations, however, are not only just the beginning, but are quickly getting more innovative and more ambitious, leading to even better inventions and discoveries. To sum us all up, we will end with a quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson. Not only are we in the universe is in us. I don't know if any deeper spiritual feeling than what that had brings upon me. Now on to Professor Gamalumbi, who will discuss the government of our space station.
Hi, I'm Professor Malumbi, and today I will be discussing the government of the Lunar Orbit Space Station. Our space station is a representative democracy. There will be only one level of government because of low population. Our branches of government are the executive branch, who will be made up of 3 leaders and can veto laws and assign positions in government. We will have the legal branch, which will make up all the judges in the station. Their job is to uphold the Constitution and the court of law. The legislative branch will make laws, and they will vote on them accordingly. The financial branch will manage money/taxes and also set regulations on the economy. The citizens branch will be made up of all the citizens of the space station, and their job will be to vote on certain issues and have those have a play in the financial and legislative branch. Citizens have a multitude of rights on the space station, but some responsibilities as well. Their freedoms include the freedom of speech, religion, justice, happiness, firearms, protest, and property. Their rights include a good-willed government, a fair court of judges, and property. The responsibilities will primarily be to follow the laws on the space station and to pay taxes. But those taxes shouldn't be taken lightly. We will have several taxes, including an income tax of 50%. Even though citizens have a lot to deal with, elected officials have even more to deal with. Most elected officials are required to do both of the major responsibilities of citizens, along with keeping their approval rating above 20% and fulfilling their job, even if the cause of them not fulfilling that job is medical issues. While lunar government may seem like something that would be alien, we still fight hard to protect the citizens and their rights and freedoms.
Before we head back to the professor to see his lifestyles on the Lunar Orbit Space Station, let's discuss what culture is. Culture is the characteristics of a group of people. These characteristics are largely spread by socialization inside a group of people. Back to you, Professor.
Welcome back. I'm here to discuss the culture here on the Lunar Orbit Space Station. For starters, the meal I just finished, or dehydrated food, is a great example of the culture we made here on the Lunar Orbit Space Station. And you see how we finished all my food? See, there's nothing in there. That's a cultural idea that I got back home from Earth, where many cultural groups, such as South Korea, consider it rude to not finish all your food, something we need to here on the space station to conserve our food supply. The shirt I'm wearing, that's an original part of our culture too, because we need lightweight clothing to conserve our energy so we don't have to push around as much weight. Even the room I'm standing in, around me, can represent the culture of our space station. Here on the station, we have to be prepared for any disaster, something that can also be seen in something that can also be in other cultures, such as in San Andreas, so keeping on the lookout and building structures that can detect harmful objects and substances is very important to almost everyone on the station.
Video's going.
Flight day, woo!
Perfect timing. Today is Flight Day, an important holiday on the space station because it's the day the first part went into space up to build the Lunar Orbit Space Station. Speaking of holidays, one holiday we took from
The game's starting.
Well, that's a good few of the cultural ideas here on the space station. I gotta go watch a space football game, which is essentially football with no gravity, a mix of culture from Earth and culture here on the station. Back to you, Isaac.
You can go in there.
Hi, I'm Gideon Malumbi, and I will be discussing the government of the Lunar Orbit Space Station.
We hope you enjoyed the presentation today here at Space News. We work hard to make content that makes Lunal happy. Now, if you wouldn't mind, give us some space while we work on the next Space News project. Oh, remember to have a good rotation. There.
It's so bad. It is so bad. I don't need it as zoomed in because I'm not a big goof.
Wait, oh yeah, when you say
You gotta be.
almost everyone on the space station.
One of their favorites is the fruity grain bar.
Provence? I don't know how to say it. Wait, what? Oh.